Blog Talk Radio.
Thank you for joining on Conservative is Cool Talk Radio. This is your host, Wayne Bradley, and we're in the weekly news, and tonight we have a very special guest. We have a congressman that is the first one to actually voted against the initial bailout, a representative from my state of Michigan, Congressman Thaddeus McCotter. How are you doing this evening, sir?
Hey, Wayne. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. I am just going through some things here. We've had a lot of different things going on in the news lately, and just starting off, what do you think are some of the biggest issues facing this country?
Well, obviously, jobs in the economy. As you know from Michigan, we have a 14% unemployment rate. The Democrat stimulus did not deliver as promised after $1 trillion because we have to pay the interest on it. We've seen unemployment in the country go up to 9.9%. And I think fundamentally on the economics of it, Wayne, we have to remember our prosperities from the private sector, not the public sector, and that as we've watched family budgets, companies' budgets all restructure for the age of global competition, there's one entity that hasn't restructured to be more accountable, to be more efficient, to be more, I would argue, just in its appropriations, and that's the federal government. We have to have them restructure like everybody else so that they can meet the needs of the 21st century.
From the average person on the outside looking in, is it really as bad as it seems right now in dealing with the current administration and actually getting Republicans and Democrats to work together? It just seems like right now, we're not getting a lot done.
Well, I think fundamentally the problem is that the Democratic majority equates progress with the growth of government bureaucracy. And the reality is true progress is measured by the expansion of human liberty. And so every solution that they've come forward with, there's been one result. Government has gotten bigger and more expensive. The reality to me is that we should be going in the opposite direction, allowing people to make their own decisions. If you think about it, Wayne, we live in an age where you can sit there with a BlackBerry in your hand and buy a good or service or communicate to people around the world in nanoseconds. And yet government doesn't want you to purchase health insurance across state lines. They want to put all this decision-making power in the hands of some Washington bureaucrats who think they can run your life better than you. That is absolutely the politics of the past, and it's an antiquated model of big government that is not sustainable in the 21st century.
Exactly. Are you working on repealing that health care bill?
Well, we all are, and we're under no illusions that the majority, the Democratic majority, will all of a sudden wake up and heed the wishes of their constituents. But what's going to happen is that over a period of time, maybe sooner, maybe later, it's going to be repealed and improved. Now, obviously, you would need 2/3 House and Senate to repeal it next year, depending on who's there or who's not, because President Obama will remain. But over a period of time, the American people not only have expressed their opposition to this prior to its passage, they continue to see an increase, as Rasmussen polling has shown. It's increasing in the desire of the American people to see it repealed and improved. And so I think eventually the sovereign people will be heard and will be heeded.
Do you agree with our Attorney General and with the other Attorney Generals through the country that have filed that lawsuit challenging its constitutionality?
I think they have solid grounds for it. I know our Attorney General, Mike Cox, has been a leader on that. And what you're looking at is a very important understanding of the Commerce Clause, is what a lot of the people are arguing, which I think rightly so, is while government can regulate commercial transactions across state lines, they can't compel a commercial transaction, which should be the difference between regulating how people market insurance to you to make sure you're not taken advantage of, as opposed to the government coming in and saying we're going to force you to buy a commercial product, which is insurance. And one of the saddest ironies of this, Wayne, has been when the Democrats brag about how they've extended health care coverage to millions of people. What they don't tell you is they did it by demanding that they buy health insurance.
Right.
Which I think if a Republican had done it, we'd hear nothing but screaming from the highest rooftops about how horrible Republicans are.
Right. And I guess that's the thing I wonder out loud, is that how come the media is almost giving them a free pass on this, and that they're not, there's not more questions being. The only people that are really asking questions is the GOP, obviously, at this point. And do you understand why the media is just pretty much giving them a pass on this?
Well, in fairness to some of our Democratic colleagues, there were over 30 Democrats that voted against it. So the only bipartisan vote on health care was against it. Wow. And what happens is, I don't want that lost. That was a courageous vote by a lot of Democrats to heed their constituents. And so when people run around saying that Republicans are the obstructionists, that was one of the big myths that was out there, because they couldn't pass it when they controlled everything.
Right.
See, as you know, Wayne, Republicans never controlled the U.S. Senate. We had a majority, but we never had 60 votes.
Never had to filibuster.
Right. Exactly. And prior to Senator Brown's election, the Democrats could have passed anything they wanted, and there was nothing that the Republicans could do. So when they talked about Republican obstructionism, the reality was it was Democrats that made the difference in trying to oppose the bill, and ultimately 30 of them in the House, over 30 of them, continued their commitment to their constituents to vote against it. Now, as for the media, Rasmussen has a wonderful little differentiation he makes in his polling where he talks about, regular voters, real people, and then he talks about something called the political class. And I would assume that the journalists and the mainstream, the dominant media, are part of that political class, and that they have a different view of it. I mean, their sensibilities are far more liberal, as judged by studies of their voting patterns, and they seem to think that somehow there's this enlightened elite that gets to lead America. The reality is the enlightened people in America are called her sovereign citizens, and the servants in government should listen to them.
I agree. You were actually the first congressman to actually oppose the Paulson bailout plan. Did you end up supporting the GM Chrysler bailout plan? Obviously, us being from Michigan.
Yeah, and the differentiation there was quite simple. One, the bill that was put forward in the House was to use existing appropriations. The government does a wonderful thing to the car companies. Was that the government had said that we are going to put an $80 billion mandate on the car companies, and they can then borrow money and repay it with interest, some of it, to meet those requirements. Right. So we're trying to free up operating money and use the 1970s, early 80s model of Chrysler, which managed to get over the hump and repay the loan with interest. What then happened, that was blocked in the Senate. And so you had a question of whether or not, if you saw working people's money used to bail out Wall Street while they paid themselves bonuses, and you had assembly line and you had the white collar and others in the auto industry, not only would they have been absolutely unjustly treated, but we would have lost our manufacturing base, and that has ramifications for our prosperity and our security. Now, in the end, we still think that the House passed bill would have been a much better way to do it. It would have continued to contain legislative control over the process, and there would have been an end in sight. But as you know, from being in Michigan, we've seen GM has finally turned a profit. Right. They're still not out of the woods yet. There's a large commitment from the taxpayers that still has to be recouped. Chrysler is starting to move forward. And at the end of the day, no one wants to repay those loans faster than anybody. Right. But as a country, Wayne, to sit there and see that the people who live in the 60-foot lot homes, the rock-ribbed Americans that work on those lines every day, to have their hard-earned money sent to the people on Wall Street who crashed the credit market and facilitated the implosion of our economy would have been inherently unjust, and it would have been very unpleasant for the way the country has traditionally been known to exist.
Have most of the banks paid back their the bailout money from that situation? Because obviously they were being their hands were being tied with how much they could pay people and that sort of thing. Have most of the banks taken care of their obligations?
Well, there's two things about that. The first is when the House, and a majority of House Republicans both times voted against that bill. I never tire of telling people that. It was a Democratic Congress. Unfortunately, it was a Republican president. It was a Democratic Congress that passed it, and a majority of House Republicans voted against it both times. Right. What happened with that was they didn't use it to purchase toxic assets to free up credit to Main Street. They immediately then switched into a recapitalization plan for the banks, which means they got money and they got to keep it. They get to sit on it. This is why the credit markets have yet to unfreeze. So while the banks may talk about paying it back, there's been nothing in terms of moving the credit back to Main Street. So the original argument that was made for the bill never happened. Secondly, you also had disbursements to banks not only through direct injections through the TARP, it went through AIG. It passed through AIG. The commitment to taxpayers stayed with AIG, but the money went scot-free to places like Goldman Sachs. That money is not counted as a loan to them. Wow. That means that it's counted as a loan to AIG. So if AIG doesn't pay it back, it's no skin off of Goldman Sachs' nose. It was almost like a big laundromat.
Sounds like it. It sounds like it, very much so. And so at this point, like you said, they didn't have to pay that back. They used that to recapitalize. Is there anything that we can do or that you can do as a leader to motivate them to actually get that money back out to Main Street?
Well, we're trying, I think what we need to do in the long run is make sure that the concentration of wealth in these quote-unquote too big to fail institutions does not continue. Nothing is too big to fail except the American people. We need a swift and sure bankruptcy process. We need rules limiting their ability to leverage and maintaining that they have adequate assets. We need to wall off their investment banking operations from traditional banking operations. And I think that this will free up entrepreneurial capital for the very type of innovation economy we need for the 21st century. There's a running story. It's apocryphal, but it makes sense that had somebody in blue jeans with a tie-dyed shirt walked into a bank in Europe and asked for startup capital for a computer company, they wouldn't have gotten it.
Right.
But because America had, at the time, still had innovative capital and still had relatively decentralized banking, a man named Bill Gates was able to get started, or Steve Jobs was able to get started because there were people out there that would take those risks. If you have a concentration within these financial institutions that become increasingly impersonal, increasingly bureaucratized, and increasingly vertically integrated, you're not going to see that type of entrepreneur get a very good reception for their innovations down the road.
And it does, to me, one of the things that I'm noticing about that, I was going to ask you about, is there anything, like I said, when we talk about lending back to the people on Main Street, the normal person, is there anything law-wise we could do to, because, a lot of people are going to have these foreclosures on their record. I'm a former loan officer, so I know a lot about that business. Is there anything that you guys can do to like, say, if they want to buy another house within 2 to 3 years and they had that old foreclosure on the record, is there anything that anyone's proposed to do to make it easier for the person on the ground to actually get another loan to buy another home after what's happened over the last couple of years?
Well, that's the problem, Wayne. What happens is the problem became, and this was under the Bush administration, continued under Republican and Democratic Congresses, was that they basically used the subprime mortgage to pump up the economy. That's where the bubble came from.
Right.
You combine that with the offshore trade imbalance with communist China, they'd take our money that they had in surplus and they'd invest it in real estate and overheat the market here too. So what the sad dilemma is that the only option then would be for government to continue to try the same very types of support mechanisms, support subsidy programs that helped lead to the bubble in the first place, and would just be delaying the day of reckoning and making it worse. Now, most of the banks understand that the last thing they want are people to default on their mortgages, and so they're trying to work with them. But the more the government would come in and try to, throw money at the problem or try to rearrange the system, it's just going to lead to the same problem down the road.
How did you feel about us helping out Greece, bailing them out essentially at this point?
Well, it strikes me that it's really a European Union problem. We understand that the global economy, the problem in Greece will become a problem if the European markets have difficulty. But I think to ask the United States taxpayers to go out there and reward or subsidize the mistakes that were made in Greece or the mistakes that were made in oversight from the European Union is a mistake. It'll just facilitate the problem continuing or being replicated in other countries. I think that they made their own version of a TARP to Greece.
Right. Where does it stop? I mean, we're looking at, California, they would be a great candidate for a bailout. Where does it stop with bailing out people that have been fiscally irresponsible?
Well, to bring it back to where we started, Wayne, it's about they're trying to keep Lyndon Johnson's Great Society model of big government sustainable. And they can't do it on an innovative entrepreneurial economy, which is what the 21st century is forcing on people. It's forcing it on businesses, it's forcing it on family budgets, and yet this is because they don't want government to have to make the difficult decisions to become restructured. We saw what Chrysler and GM had to do in bankruptcy. We saw the pain it inflicted on workers. We saw them lose their jobs. We saw retirees' pensions shaved down. And yet the only entity out there that refuses to do this is government, because government doesn't spend what it makes, it spends what it takes. So when you see the state of California, you see what's happened in Michigan, you see what's happening in Washington, they're still acting as if this is 1965 and we can have this type of mammoth government with a tax base that will continue to expand despite big government. In the age of global competition, that's no longer an operative model. So when they talk about, the stimulus bill was really an attempt to try to resuscitate the big government model, and it's not sustainable over time.
The financial reform bill they proposed, it still had bailout money included in that bill. What did you think about that bill, and how are you leaning towards on that proposal?
Well, we're waiting for him to bring it up. It's in a conference committee. We voted no on it when it went out of here. Anything that continues too big to fail or allows the government to determine who does or does not succeed after they put themselves in a bad spot. That's why I say we need to have strict limits on leverage, strict limits on what assets they have to have on hand, wall off the investment banking operations and other operations from traditional banking, and have a swift and certain prepackaged type bankruptcy for the companies that go in. Anything other than that, we're just tinkering around the edges. And one of the great indictments of the Democrats' quote-unquote financial reform bill is it does nothing with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, which are already rapidly becoming the largest bailout items. It's uncapped, it's off budget, and it's completely out of control, and they did nothing with it.
Right. Now, you supported President Bush's the war on Iraq, and you caught a lot of heat from that from some people locally. How close are we now to actually getting out of Iraq, which obviously the president promised he would do? How close are we to doing that, and strategy-wise, is it a good thing?
Well, I think to the president's credit, he realized that campaign rhetoric is one thing, but the reality on the ground for our soldiers and for the Iraqi people was another. And so he did not engage in what many wanted him to do. It was a precipitous withdrawal from Iraq that would have taken the success of the Petraeus surge, which was not simply a troop increase, but it was an actual, I argue, reorientation of the reconstruction process, which empowered local Iraqis to control the destiny of their communities and build from the ground up a sustainable democracy. It's still not perfect, but as we can see from the violence going down, as we can continue to see from the diminished attacks on our troops, that the Iraqi democracy is going to have a wonderful chance to survive, and that the American troops are going to continue to be less and less of a presence there because the facts on the ground won't warrant their being in Iraq. I think this month is the first month we've seen we have fewer combat forces in Iraq than we do in Afghanistan. Right. So I think that Iraq, as long as we continue to do a responsible withdrawal of the troops, and is going to be considered a victory because you'll have a stable democracy there that is no longer producing terrorists or sheltering terrorists, but is capturing them as we've seen them do. Afghanistan is going to be very difficult. It took a lot longer for the Bush administration to understand that the reconstruction process there was faulty. It was, again, another top-down centralized version. But I think that they're getting their arms around it. I think General Petraeus, General McChrystal, and others know what they're doing. I, again, commend and support President Obama's sending more troops there to get the job done so that it never reverts back to a haven for terrorists or a place for the Taliban to terrorize Afghans. When you think about it, the United States promised not only that we would defend our country by removing the tyrants from Afghanistan and from Iraq, but we also promised the Iraqi and the Afghan people that we would help expand the most precious gift that any human being has from God, which is liberty. Right. And so I think that it's commendable that both President Bush and President Obama have not betrayed that commitment in those countries.
Okay. And I talked to Michelle Bachmann about this one on a recent interview, and I had the same question for you. Is that why is the president taking such a tough stance with Israel, but yet he's a lot more, I use the word passive when it comes to Iran, and now you have North Korea. Why is he so tough with our ally?
Well, that's a wonderful question that I've not had the chance to broach with the president. Okay. We've seen this in relation especially to Iran when the Green Revolution was moving forward. The people seeking freedom in the streets of Tehran and throughout the country were shot in the streets by security forces or militia aligned with the security forces. We've seen the beatings, we've seen imprisonments, we've seen executions. And it would seem to me that morally the United States has to continue to condemn this in the strongest possible terms and find ways short of military assistance, which the resistance has not asked for, regardless, but to try to give as much support that we can to the freedom movement within Iran in much the same way that President Reagan gave as much support short of military support that we could to the Solidarity movement in Poland when it was under the Soviet Union's occupation of the Baltic nations. The desire to be free is not something that is simply found in the United States or in Western Europe. It is something every human being feels because, again, Wayne, it's a gift from God, and we should be standing with them. And I don't think we should be muting our response to the barbarous actions of the Iranian regime to its own people or to anyone else.
You know, you made a statement, and I noticed you brought God up a few times, and I really can appreciate that. You made a quote once that said, "No good government denies God's presence." And I think do you think that right now we're kind of trying to move away from that? It seems like a lot of people are trying to stray away from that kind of belief system.
Why, look, it's there, as you know as well as anybody, Wayne. It's there in the Declaration of Independence, our Creator. It's rife throughout the founding documents of the country. The country has always operated on that premise. And so I think that when you look at the horrors of the 20th century, you had pagan Nazi Germany, you had atheist communism over there in Russia and elsewhere, and you saw the horrible toll it's taken. And it seems to me that one of the things that we have is the wonderful freedom of expression of religion in this country. And I think that it's co-equal with the refusal to establish one sect through the government. But it seems to me that expressions of religion should not be looked down upon in this country. It certainly wasn't in accordance with what the founders thought, or certainly any of the modern presidents of both parties until recently.
Okay. And Bush called you that rock and roll dude. Are you still playing with the Second Amendment ban?
No, that's all over. 60% of the members left Congress last term, one way, shape, or form.
Oh.
So we had a great time playing for the troops. We'd play for charities. And it was nice, and, it ended. So you move forward. But I do miss playing for the troops. We played one time in Afghanistan at Bagram Air Force Base on a New Year's Eve. It was great. It was just wonderful to be with them.
I understand. And one other note here, I know you went to U of D. Are you excited about that new point guard that's coming in there? I'm
always excited about my Titans. I'm always excited. See Callahan Hall, Cobo Hall. Oh, yeah. Oh, man. U of D basketball. I don't know why you guys
got a big recruit coming in like that. It's got to be a good feeling.
Well, it's great. It's great to see, it's great for Detroit. It's great for my alma mater. I'm also happy, want to see University of Detroit start getting some championships the way my Catholic Central High School alma mater has.
Reverend Catholic Central. Very familiar. I went to Jesu in that area, so I'm very familiar with
yeah.
All right. Well, I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know how rough it is out there, so you're welcome to come on anytime, and I'm sure we'll be reaching out to you again. But thank you so much for coming on tonight.
Okay, man. Thanks for having me.
All right. Have a good night. God bless you.
God bless. Bye.
Bye-bye. All right. That was Representative Thaddeus McCotter from Michigan. I appreciate him coming on the show. Give me a call, people, if you're listening in. The call-in number is 347-996-3175. Again, the call-in number is 347-996-3175. I got another guest that I'm gonna play the interview for, Tim Phillips, who is the president of Americans for Prosperity. We had a great conversation earlier today talking about the direction of this country and the things we can do to improve them. So I'm looking forward to that. Let me know what you thought of the interview with the congressman. The call-in number is 347-996-3175. I'm going to go to my tweet deck here to see what's going on. All right. Thanks for retweeting that for the radio show this evening. Let's see here. All right, and BHO007, who has been saying some really ugly things to me. I hope you call in today. I won't repeat the words that you called me on Twitter, because I said this is a Christian program, so I try to keep it moving. But I hope if you're listening, give me a call. I'd love to get an intelligent debate with you about some of the things that were said. I'll go out on a limb here and talk about what you were talking about. You asked me about the Rand Paul comments. And I'll just say flat out, I disagree with what he said. I don't think that in particular right now that would be something that he would want to discuss or even go through. But if that's his honest opinion, he's entitled to that. I disagree. He obviously did not agree with the Civil Rights Acts in the 1960s. And again, from a libertarian standpoint, if that's the way you want to dress it up, I can respect that, but I can respectfully just disagree with that. There's no way that I could sit here as an African-American male and tell you that again, and there's only one person that Ron Paul and his son Rand Paul that felt this way. So I want to make it clear to BHO 007 again that does not speak to the whole Republican Party, and Ron Paul, quite frankly, has always been known as an independent maverick. So if he feels that way, he's entitled to his opinion. And again, we all have the right to an opinion here in America. That's what makes our country great. But I definitely disagree with it. I want to tell everyone to go to the website, country.Tim. We got some great polls out there, interesting polls. We did a grading on the president. He gave himself a B+. I think it was last December. 76% of the people polled gave him an F. I think we had 1% A, 1% B, and everything else was D's and F's. So while the president might grade himself pretty highly, it's obvious the American people, or at least the people that follow me, disagree with that notion. So, again, go to the website, conservativescool.com, and check out all the different features we have there. We do have a polling site, and I'd love to hear from anybody out there that's listening in tonight. Give me a call, 347-996-3175. Some other interesting news happened today. President Obama agreed to put 1,200 National Guard troops on the border, which I made a comment on saying that that's a good start. But John McCain and them, they requested 6,000 troops. And so while 1,200 is definitely better than nothing, it falls short of what they actually need to do the job. And so hopefully that he will take this as being the first step into trying to secure our borders, because if there's nothing else we can learn from everything that's going on here, we have to put a better emphasis and more importance on securing our borders if we're going to have a sound country. I mean, we have a lot of problems right now with people getting jobs and health care and all the things we spend money on, and we just quite honestly don't need the hassles and the things that illegals are bringing to this scenario. So, again, the idea that we need to secure the borders needs to be first and foremost. I don't 100% agree with the Arizona law, but again, you gave them no choice if the federal government is not willing to step up and do their part, which is, again, securing the borders. Our job as a country, the federal government's job as a country is to secure the country, keep us safe, not necessarily give us free health care and these sort of entitlement programs, but the job number one is to keep this country safe. And if we're not watching and patrolling our borders properly, that will not happen. So I encourage that it's a good thing that he put 1,200 troops up there, but we need a lot more. And again, we need to think about putting up the fence. I hear people argue that if we build a 50-foot fence, they'll just make a 51-foot ladder. Well, we ought to try that, because what we've done so far has not been effective, and it hasn't deterred anyone. In fact, the only thing that has deterred anything from illegals coming here is to slow down in employment. They've actually slowed down because of the fact that the lack of jobs here in America, which ought to be even a scarier idea, is that we can't even get illegals to come over here right now because our economy is so bad. So, again, we need to look at things from every angle and every perspective on how we can make this country more secure, make sure we put a policy in place that's not going to reward the people that came over here illegally. Amnesty is not the way, but because there are a lot of people here that want to come to America that are doing it the right way, that are waiting their turn, that are going through all the proper channels to do that. And those are the people that need to be admitted into this country first, because they're the ones that respect the laws and the policies of this country. And so those are the kind of people we want here. Again, this is a melting pot of the world. A lot of people have come here and become business people and entrepreneurs and successful, and this is the land of opportunity, and there's no better place to live but in America. So I understand why people want to come here, but you have to do things the right way, and that's the way we do things based on rules and procedures, and I think that's what they're going to have to do. So I commend the president for trying to, handle the problem, but we're going to have to do a lot more, and I hope that our leaders on both sides of the aisle will do more to do something about that. So That was the one thing that I did not get to touch upon with Congressman McCotter, is asking him about what we can do to effectively combat the immigration problems that we have here in America. So if you got any suggestions, I'd like to hear from you. Give me a call, 347-996-3175. I know I got a couple people listening in there, but feel free to give me a call, 347-996-3175. I got a couple guests here in the chat room. Hello, everybody in the chat room. I see you in there. Give me a call. I want to hear from you. 347-996-3175. And very shortly, I'll be playing my interview that I had with Tim Phillips, who again is the president of Americans for Prosperity, which is a group that is fighting for the rights for all Americans for smaller government, less government intrusiveness, less taxes, all the things that, again, that we ought to look forward to. And thanks again, Congressman McCotter, for coming on the show. I appreciate it. We'll have to do that again. This Friday, we got some different events going on. This Friday, I'll be at the Michigan Republican Hispanic Assembly Awards dinner. I'm looking forward to that. We might be doing a live broadcast from down there. We just got to work out all the logistics on that. But I'm looking forward to doing that dinner and getting, like I said, people that want to come to this country and do it the right way are more than willing to do the things to get here, to do it the right way, which is applying for your cards, going through, and again, we just have a lot of different ways that people are trying to go around the system, and we don't need our government or any of our leaders to make that much easier. So, again, I'm going to go into the interview I had with Tim Phillips, again, who is the president for Americans for Prosperity. Go ahead and listen to the interview, and I'll be back very shortly. Thank you for joining me today on Conservative is Cool Talk Radio. This is your host, Wayne Bradley, and today I have a very special guest in the office today. It's Tim Phillips. He is the president of Americans for Prosperity. Mr. Phillips, thank you for joining me today.
Absolutely.
All right. I was doing some research on the website, and I'm a member of Americans for Prosperity, and I just want to know right now, first, can you just give us some background of yourself, and then kind of give us a little background information about the organization?
I was a campaign political worker and operative for many years in the private sector, and I always felt that if we elected enough Republicans, that would probably solve all the problems in the world. and in all candor, I was wrong. I mean, I think they do some things well, but in the end, I decided that we really need a conservative movement, specifically in our case with Americans for Prosperity, a free market group that will have troops and activists who will fight for our economic freedoms, and specifically will hold political leaders in both parties, Democrat and Republican, accountable on spending, taxes, growth of government. Because in the early 2000s, we saw Republicans absolutely lose their way on spending, and now we're seeing Democrats who are literally bankrupting our country if we don't stop their spending efforts. So that's kind of what Americans for Prosperity is about. It's about building a grassroots organization across this country that will hold these elected leaders at the federal, state, and local level accountable when it comes to spending too much money, taxing too much, and pushing policies that hurt our economic freedoms.
Exactly. And for someone who might want to become a member or wants to get involved with Americans for Prosperity, how much does it cost to become a member, and what do they need to do to get enrolled?
We ask folks to become activists, people who take action to defend their economic freedoms, whether it's emailing a member of Congress or coming out to one of the rallies or efforts we do around the country. There's no charge. We just ask them to go to Americans4prosperity.org, Americans4prosperity.org. There's easy sign-up information there. It tells you all about the organization. And the most important thing, we want to raise money. Of course, we have to pay the expense of keeping this operation really going and making a difference. But we urge people, get active first. Give up your time and take the effort to come out to these rallies. You'll see on the website they're detailed on key issues in key states. Make a difference with your time first.
Okay. And what's the website address for people so they can go check that out?
AmericansForProsperity.org. Americans, F-O-R, Prosperity.org. And we'd love to have folks come in there. You can pull up what's happening in your state. There are state links as well as national links to the key issues we're working on, like cap and trade and the spending issues, etc.
And what do you think for the typical American that's sitting at home right now that might be listening to this, what do you think their biggest concern should be with the way this country is headed and the way our government is leading us?
The sheer growth of government, both in regulation and spending, because their spending and their over-regulation literally is killing the long-term economic health and opportunity for every American. And we look at Greece, a country that is literally bankrupt.
Right.
And it's bankrupt because it has a government that is so big that the private sector, there's no way they can support it. And we don't want that to happen in America. We have $1.5 trillion this budget year, in budget deficits in America. We have a government that is growing, adding jobs by the tens of thousands. Those are jobs that cannot be sustained because they're being paid for using taxpayer dollars that don't exist at this point. And we have brand new entitlements that are piling up, whether it's the health care takeover we just saw that's going to spend another $1 trillion
right.
In the near future. And so that is the biggest challenge facing our country. There are individual issues. The health care takeover is a big one. We've got to turn around. Cap and trade is a big one, card check. But the biggest overall threat, and one that all three of these issues fall into, are politicians that want government to be ever bigger, ever more powerful. And that chokes off freedom, it chokes off opportunity, it kills jobs, and in the end it piles up taxes and debt, and it's going to bankrupt our country if we don't stop them.
Right. Now, would you agree that, theoretically most people believe that's been a thing with Democrats, but like you were saying before, have the Republicans kind of gotten a little bit headstrong and trying to make government bigger, and are we finally maybe righting the ship with some of the new candidates that are coming in?
Listen, absolutely. I've had sometimes reporters or people on the left say, oh, aren't you guys just a front group always attacking Democrats? Nothing could be further from the truth. The very first national issue that Americans for Prosperity took on was 2006, and it was earmarks. Those pork barrel projects that all the politicians, or most of them, support.
Right.
And we went to the site of the 50 biggest earmarks in the country, in our view, the 50 worst ones. And over half of them were in Republican districts because Republicans were in power then,
right.
And they were spending too much money too. So we've taken on Republicans when they've done the wrong thing. Right now, it is more Democrats because Democrats control the House, Democrats control the Senate. We have a Democrat president, and all three of those institutions are spending money that we don't have on projects that are too big, too grasping, too big on the red tape and regulation. And so we have more of a beef right now, if you will, with Democrats because they're in power.
Right.
But I think we need a healthy, strong, vibrant, grassroots conservative movement like Americans for Prosperity, like the Tea Parties, to hold both parties accountable. Absolutely.
Right. Now, how did you feel? I know that was one of the president's biggest promises, that he wouldn't make bills with earmarks and things of that nature. And that was like one of the very first things he did was with the spending bill, suggested and put a lot more earmarks in there. How do you feel when politicians pretty much just lie to us boldly about things like that?
A lot of Americans voted for Barack Obama genuinely thinking he was a different kind of politician.
Right.
That he wasn't, as he said, he wasn't red state, he wasn't blue state, he was for America. He wasn't just another big spending Democrat, he wasn't just a partisan politician. Unfortunately, his deeds have not matched up to that rhetoric. The earmark example where he's signed bill after bill with literally tens of thousands of these pork barrel earmarks. He promised that lobbyists would not be able to serve in his administration. Then he turned around and gave waivers to dozens of big, high-powered Washington lobbyists to be in the administration. He promised he wasn't going to spend money hand over fist, and he's given us the biggest budget deficits back-to-back in our nation's history in real dollars. So it's really frustrating and disappointing, but he has governed as just another big spending liberal.
Do you think the media is pretty much giving him a pass for these broken promises that he's, that I heard with my own ears, essentially?
Some of the media have, no doubt about that. They don't really report what we're talking about. But I do think that certainly on the spending in general, they have done a decent job of reporting it.
Okay.
Thank goodness for talk radio, and thank goodness for Fox News, and thank goodness for all the literally thousands of bloggers, conservative bloggers, and new media folks out there, because those groups are really holding him accountable. And we've got to keep pressing the traditional media. I don't call them mainstream media because we're mainstream, in my view, very much so. But the traditional media, we've got to keep pressing them to report what this administration is doing on spending and taxes. But thankfully, we've got our own media now. And
right.
I'm so glad that we have that mechanism to get the real word to the American people.
Yeah, I refer to them as the lamestream media myself.
Yeah, I never want to give away the term mainstream because I think economic freedom and opportunity and conservative values are as mainstream as apple pie.
I totally agree. Do you favor the fair tax legislation that's been proposed out here?
We want tax reform. Americans for Prosperity has not taken a position favoring the fair tax or the flat tax.
Okay.
But we I think both those have merit. So we haven't taken a stand saying, oh no, we prefer fair over flat or flat over fair.
Okay.
But I'll tell you this: we want to change the current economic system. The current tax system. The current tax system is terrible. And it takes too much money and it's too complicated. And the other thing we want to see, before we institute a flat or a fair tax, we want to make sure we repeal constitutionally the income tax, because if we just do away with it legislatively, then you know how that works. It could always come back in 2 or 3 years. So
right.
we could bring on so whatever happens, I would love to see us repeal constitutionally that income tax, which is just a terrible system of taxation.
I totally agree. A lot of people aren't familiar with what the government's trying to do right now with the internet takeover. Could you explain a little bit more about that?
Yes. The government, this administration, has shown a predisposition to use their regulatory agencies, their unelected bureaucratic agencies, to pass the change they want when Congress won't do it.
Okay.
So, for example, when cap and trade stalled out, which thankfully is stalled right now, although we have a big fight on our hands there, they're using the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, to try to backdoor cap and trade without using Congress. It's the same way with the Internet. The liberals and the left, they literally look at the Internet and they go, wait a minute, we've got to regulate it. We've got to have more regulation. We've got to have more government say over who gets access to all of the infrastructure that's been built by the private sector. We want to control and pick winners and losers when it comes to the Internet. And also, they look at it as an agent of social change. I mean, if the government can have more say in controlling the Internet content and access to it, that gives it enormous new regulatory powers. So they know that left-wing view is never going to get through Congress at this point, even with the liberal Democrat majorities right now.
Right.
So what are they doing? They're using the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, which they control right now, to try to pass by regulatory fiat, if you will, sweeping changes that will change the Internet as we know it. I mean, look, the Internet is one of the great success stories in the private economic sector in the last 20 years.
Right.
There has created tens of thousands of jobs, billions in wealth. It makes our lives easier every day. Do we really trust the government to step in and make it better?
No.
I mean, government didn't make Amtrak better when it took over the trains.
Right.
The government has Medicare, and we have a $36 trillion unfunded liability when it comes to Medicare. Not for a second. Government has the post office, and it's losing billions every single year with waste and inefficiency.
Right.
So we don't trust the government to step in and, quote, fix the Internet when it's not broken.
Right, exactly. And for a lot of people, what would be the benefit for them to try to control the Internet at this point? Is it just they don't want the free flow of information, stifling competition? What are the benefits of trying to do that?
several things. Number one, it will give the political class enormous new fundraising powers for all of their campaigns. I mean, think about it. Right now, one of the most heavily regulated areas of the economy are the utilities, our energy grid, right? Utilities. They're very heavily regulated. It's not surprising that utilities are one of the biggest fundraising givers to the political class, because since they're regulated heavily, since the government can kind of control much of what they do, these guys are beholden to the politicians, right?
Right.
So they give us millions and millions every single year. Well, the political class knows that if they basically regulate the internet, it will be a source of massive new fundraising for them. That's number one. And I know it sounds base and crass, and it is, unfortunately.
I wish they could create jobs like that. I mean, that sounds like they're always trying to do.
Doesn't quite work that way.
Right.
A second benefit is if the government can control who has access to T1 lines, the broadband lines, the T1 lines that have been laid across the country at the cost, by the way, of billions to the private sector. If the government can step in and go, well, wait a minute, we now classify this infrastructure, this broadband, this internet infrastructure, as a government-run utility, which is what they want. That gives them enormous power to direct social change as they see fit. They'll be able to pick winners and losers. They'll be able to say, well, you know what, these groups deserve more access to the internet. They'll just happen to be liberal groups, by the way. I know you're shocked to hear that. But they'll have the ability and the power to pick winners and losers. And that's not in the interest of individual Americans to have a government picking who has access or doesn't have access to arguably one of the most powerful economic generators of this century.
Wow.
And they'll be able to do that. And then the third area is, I believe they want a fairness doctrine on the internet. So you've heard of fairness doctrine as it relates to radio stations and TV stations. So if you're Rush Limbaugh or yourself and you have a show that's pretty successful, they can step in and go, whoa, wait a minute. We believe that since you're part of the public good, the airwaves are really the public good,
right.
We believe that you should have to present both sides. And we're going to determine when you're not doing that, and we're going to fine you if you don't do that.
Wow.
Imagine them being able to go on to bloggers and other internet groups, news portals, everyone else, and go, you know what, we want to make sure we have a fairness doctrine on the internet. After all, the internet now is a government-run utility, if you will, and we want to create an internet that's better for the public good. When you hear terms like public good, what that means with liberals is we want our friends to have predominance, and we want to pick who the winners and losers are. And I think that's where they want to head with the internet.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty scary right there. What has Americans for Prosperity took a stand on the immigration problems we're having right now in Arizona?
We have not. That's not an issue that we've been involved in.
Okay.
We focus on taxes, spending, and regulatory battles like this internet battle, like the EPA effort. There are a lot of good groups out there that are doing heavy lifting on that issue.
Right.
And we've chosen to try to do what we do best.
Gotcha. And one last thing about the climate tax pledge, the no climate tax pledge. Could you explain
absolutely.
that so we can know more about that, and so people can reach out to their leaders to tell them to make sure they sign that?
Yes. Cap and trade is, I would argue, the biggest individual issue threat, along with the health care battle. The liberals want to pass cap and trade, so we're asking members of Congress or candidates for Congress, and at the state level as well, to simply sign a no climate tax pledge that says, I will oppose any and all pieces of legislation that increase climate taxes or energy taxes of any sort, specifically saying, in other words, we're asking these political leaders and candidates to specifically say, I'm not going to support cap and trade or any other energy tax that seeks to in the name of global warming, Al Gore's most cherished hope and dream, to raise taxes and fees on the American people. Over 500 candidates now have signed it, and we want to get to 1,000 candidates across the country this year. So we're asking our activists and supporters to go to these elected officials or the candidates and say, sign the pledge.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. I want can you make sure you give everyone the website address one more time, so if they want to become a member, they can enroll and become active?
You bet. It's Americans for prosperity.org. Americans4prosperity.org.
All right. Well, Tim, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to talk to us and let us know what's going on out there. We'll continue to follow, and again, I'll make sure people are getting the message for Americans for Prosperity.
Thanks, Wayne. Thanks for having me. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Okay.
Bye-bye. All right. That was my interview with Tim Phillips. I got 10 minutes left on the show here, so I'm about to go off the air soon. I just reading through some of these emails and tweets I got here. I just wanted everybody to know what was going on. I had a really awful tweet from somebody today, and what he said, again, I won't repeat on the show, but people, we got to get past all the ridiculous rhetoric and all the name calling. This thing is not personal like that. The words that were used with me, again, doesn't have any place for any, and this part of of what we do here. We talk intelligently about debates and about the issues, and I appreciate all the support I'm getting here on Twitter. I'm about to send out a message here, just if anybody wants to call into the show. 347, give us a call, 996-3175. Now, from time to time, I get rude messages from people, and it doesn't really bother me too much. But you know what? I guess what it is that sometimes people are just really ignorant, and I think that again, that it shows, and again, like someone said, that's just liberal hate. That's what they do to try to distract people from the issues. And I just think, thanks a lot to Letter B. That's my cousin. I guess he saw my messages too. Good, give a call in if you hear it. Like I said, we just had some ugly messages, and all my Twitter fam is really supporting me here. So, just appreciate everybody that's calling in and tweeting in on it. No, it was disgusting. I agree that the comments he made using the N word essentially, regarding me on Twitter, was just highly inappropriate. And again, I'm not gonna spend too much time on that, but I want people to don't let people distract us from the real issues. I'm gonna take this call real quick. Caller, you on the air?
Hi. How's it going, bud?
All right. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. I just got notified about your show. Conservative is cool.
Great. Who am I speaking with?
You. My name is Chris Nwasike. I'm calling from Jacksonville, Florida. Great,
Chris. Thanks for calling in to the show. Did you hear any of my interviews tonight?
Yeah, I just heard one with the president of Americans for Prosperity, and I actually, while he was talking, went on and joined Americans for Prosperity, and listened to what they stand for, and I agree 100% with it.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad you. Appreciate you for listening in. If you're on Blog Talk, make sure you join me as a friend, okay? So we can you can listen in every week. I do a show usually on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we do a Fix Michigan Monday show also. So I appreciate you for calling in.
Absolutely. I'm also a candidate for Congress in the 3rd Congressional District of Florida, and a black Republican, a supporter of the Tea Party movement down here and nationwide. And I just want to commend you for actually, stepping up and standing up for what you believe is conservative. I'm an ultra-conservative, and I believe in the American way and the American dream. I don't support illegal immigration or broad sweeping amnesty, grants to illegal immigrants. And so I think that if there are more people like you out there just kind of talking, fighting a good fight, that we do have a chance to redeem this nation and restore it to what our founding fathers, or what the founding fathers actually intended this country to be.
What's your website address? I'll check you out on there, and we can get you on the show so we can have you come on and talk about the issues.
Absolutely. It's NWASIK for Congress, and it's spelled NW, A as in Apple, S as in Sam, I like India, K like Kite, E like Edward, for Congress.com.
All right. And what district is that?
It's the 3rd Congressional District of Florida.
3rd District in Florida. Okay. All right. I tell you what. Send me. Are you following me on Twitter?
Not yet, but I would do this right now.
Yeah, please follow me on Twitter at WBConservative, and that's my username. And let's send me a message so we can try to definitely get you set up so you can come back on here and talk about your campaign. Okay?
Sure, I'll do that.
All right. And I'll just give you the email address too. And, I know I might be catching me a couple emails online now for this, but it's okay. Twitter fam at conservativeiscool.com. That's Twitter fam at conservativeiscool.com, and just send me an email and we can let's get you on the show. Okay?
I'll do that, and that's conservative FAN or FAM as in Mary.
Fam. Yep. Twitter fam at conservativeiscool.com.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah, I just wanted to give you a good shout out there and encourage you to keep on keeping on and fighting a good fight, man.
I appreciate it so much, sir. And like I said, we want to have you come back on and talk about your campaign, okay?
All right, Wayne. God bless. Good night.
God bless you and good night. Caller, you on the air?
Hi, is that me?
That is you. How are you doing this evening?
Okay, hi. Sorry, this is Cindy, Synergies.
Hi, Cindy. How are you doing?
I'm well. It's about almost 3 a.m. here in London.
Oh my goodness, 3 a.m. in London. I hear that. Thank you for calling in.
Yeah.
You're up late tonight, huh?
No, I'm up early.
Up early? Okay, I'm scared of you. Thank you for calling in. Did you hear the show tonight?
No, I literally just dialed in to, or logged in rather, to check some emails before I got ready for work, and I saw this nonsense from this BHO guy.
Oh yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah,
I'm not quite sure.
And he's done that before, and every now and then, it's so ugly that I got to share that because I want people to understand there's people out here that do that to distract people from the real issues that what's going on out here. And so. Well,
this is it. That's exactly right, Wayne. And what gets to me, because I had to block him at one point, and he's still blocked. One of the problems with Twitter, and it's one of its strengths, is the fact that you can have lots of streams of consciousness thought that you type, and then maybe you make connections based on political beliefs, how you make hollandaise sauce, etc. But when you are abusive the way he can be, it's just not productive. And the problem with America right now, I'm a conservative. I consider myself conservative, even though, quite frankly, I wouldn't associate myself with the Republican Party at the moment. That's a different discussion. We could talk offline. There's so many issues that are going on right now that Americans just need to be focused on, especially with respect to the economy. I work in investment banking. There's a lot of things that are happening right now globally. What's happening here in Britain with respect to all these jobs that are going, etc. And you just don't need people who claim to be political junkies talking like they're drug junkies.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's what, like I said, that's what happens to distract folks from the real issues, and that's what that gentleman just tried to do there. What was use that word loosely too.
And apologies if I didn't appreciate what tonight's topic was.
Oh, that's okay. I appreciate you for calling in because like I said, you're up at 3 a.m. and you're giving me a call, so I appreciate you calling in. Like I said, it's no problem at all. We talked to Thaddeus McCotter, who was a congressman out of Michigan, and I also had the president of the Americans for Prosperity on there. And you can always go back on and listen to the show later that day. I'll repost the website, but you can listen to it within 20 minutes of the night's show.
Oh, so. Fantastic.
Pardon me?
Fantastic. No, I just want to say that I totally support your stream, and I wish you nothing but success here. And don't let the trolls get you.
I promise I won't let you do. I won't let that happen. And thank you so much for your support, and thanks for calling in. God bless you.
All right, you take care now.
Have a nice day. You gotta go to work.
Yeah, no, I work in Paris, so I've got to get the first Eurostar out of here. So listen, you take care, and I'll look forward to looking at your stream.
Thanks a lot. Have a good day.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye. All right, I've got 15 seconds left on here on the show. I just want to thank everybody that's listening, everybody that called in tonight. ConservativeIsCool.com, the website, and listen to all the recorded shows. Thank you for all your support. This is Wayne Bradley signing out, saying conservative is cool. Check it out. Good night.